Okay, so we're going to make our main riff, and I'm going to create a new MIDI track and add in a Sylenth, and you can use any subtractive synths with multi oscillators. Sylenth's great for trance leads, so is Alchemy, and there's a whole host of other ones out there. If you have a PC, Synth One, it's a free plugin that's very popular, and there's a few others out there, so you can surely find something that would work for super saw style trance sounds. So we're going to use our Sylenth. I'm going to initialize the preset, turn our voices to 8, turn our retrig off, and put our detune up slightly. You can hear there that the detune, you can go from a really ravey sort of sound to somewhere in between. And for this, we're sort of looking for something not as ravey, just something quite, I suppose, trancey, something we're going to have lots of delay on. It's not going to be too ravey, and it's just going to sort of roll along. We're going to want to change our amp envelope, and what we want is something that sort of has a plucky sort of sound to it, but isn't just too static and too plucky. So what we want is to get an initial nice attack, and then we can bring our sustain up as well, and that'll help sort of give a bit of body to the sound. And then we can bring our release up, and that just gives us some a nice plucky vibe. I'm also going to add a tiny bit of distortion, and then we'll add our filter. And again, we're just going to use a 24 dB low pass filter, and we're going to set up a filter envelope. So we're selecting cutoff AB. We're going to put our decay up on our release up and our envelope amount up. We've got a nice plucky sound. And what we can do is adjust the distortion down at this level and just make sure it's sounding right, sweeping right the way through. And we can play about with the detune at a later stage just to sort of make sure how sort of big or ravey we want it. The other thing you could add, and it just gives it a bit of top end, is some white noise. And we don't want too much of it, just a tiny amount, and that'll just give us a nice sort of fizz to the top end. And then next we're going to add some delays. And I'm just going to add a ping pong delay, and this will help to give it a lot of width. And I'm going to spread out the filter, so we're capturing almost all of the frequency, just not right to the top. And we'll ease back on our feedback and ease back on our dry wet. And we'll add a very tiny amount of offset. And this just means that when each delay tap comes back, it'll be offset delayed very slightly. And what this means is that it'll sort of give the impression of spreading out almost, that the delay times are getting a wee bit longer each time, and it sort of gives them a better sort of depth perception. Okay, and I've been playing around and I found the sort of rough notes that we're going to be using. And it's a D, E, and the A. And we're going to combine that with the notes in the bass, and that gives us this riff. And one of the notes that's interesting is the last note. And the last note is the A for the bass, or the A sharp for the bass, and we've got an A on our lead sound. And it gives this slightly dissonant note that wants to be resolved. So we can resolve that back up to the C. So what I'll do, I'll play that in and then we can look at the notes. I'll just turn it up a bit so we can hear it a bit better. Try that again, made a bit of a mistake. And what I'm going to do is just put a bit of a compressor on there just to bring the volume up and add a bit of a tack to it. And that'll help me hear it a bit better as well. So we've got our notes pretty much in there. Shouldn't have to do too much editing. We can just hit Apple and U to quantize, or Control and U on the PC. Some of the times I've sort of added a double note in at the end, and some of the times I haven't. So I think I like the sound of it with the double note in. So I'll just copy those across. Just gives it a bit more rhythm. Makes it sound a bit faster. Bit of a problem in this section, I think. And I'm just comparing the sort of different sections with each other just to make sure we've got it set out properly. So what we can do, it's actually just looping round twice at the same point. So we can just take the second half. That's sounding pretty good. And we can check what it sounds like when it's sort of at its lower register in the filter. That sounds pretty good there too. And then what we're going to do is add a return track, and we'll add our main sort of reverb. So I'm going to use Ether, but you could use the built-in reverb in Ableton. Sounds pretty good. Ether just sounds much nicer. And there's actually a really good preset for exactly what we're after. Transynth 2. And it just gives a nice open reverb sound. And at this stage there's no real need to program that sound. We can sort of go back later if we need to and tweak the sound if it's not fitting in. And we'll bring our filter up and see what it sounds fully lit. I'll maybe add a tiny bit more overdrive. Bring up our release a bit. And we want that sort of just really rolly, sort of trippy sound, trancey sound. And we can now play about with our detune to see what's sort of going to work. So depending on what type of track you're going for, you can sort of play about with that. If you want something really ravey and banging, then you can sort of bring it up a bit. And we want sort of something a bit more subtle. And then the last thing we're going to do with this is just add some sidechain compression. We're going to sidechain from the kick, and this will just help to sort of bed our lead into the track. And we don't want too much of it on. And I should explain as well, normally we would put delays on our returns, but in the case of this riff, what I wanted to do was have the delay feeding into all the compression and also the reverb. So it just means our delay is getting reverb. It's actually part of the lead sound, and it's, you know, it's getting the same compression and the same reverb as everything else. So we've copied across from our fast bass a compressor with the sidechain already set up, and we'll do the same. We'll maybe tone that down a tiny bit, and we'll copy that as well to our sort of main riff reverb, and we'll name that riff verb, just so we know what it is. And a good way to check if you've got a nice riff is to solo it alongside your pad sounds, your chords, and just make sure it's all sort of tying in. So there we go, I'm happy with that. Maybe just tone back slightly on the delays and the feedback. That should be us. Okay, so that's our sort of riff sorted for our chorus, and in the next video we're going to take a look at the riff on our verse.